So welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time to learn about art journaling today. My name is Camille Smith and I'm a board certified registered art therapist, and I work for Resilient Health and in their Art Awakenings program. So that's kind of my story. I was around at the very beginning of Art Awakenings and have been able to see the program grow to 17 studios in 8 different counties in Arizona. So I think the model works, and I've been very blessed to have that be a big part of my career as an art therapist. We do serve youth, we serve families, we serve adults, and within the adult population, we serve people who have serious mental illness as well as general mental health and substance abuse. So we pretty much cover the whole range of services to whoever needs them. So I know right now things are really kind of challenging for everybody. I think we're all at a different level of stress and just kind of at least up a few ticks. And there are a lot of different things we can do to help ourselves feel better. But one of the things that I found works really well is somehow getting things out instead of just letting them roll around in our mind. If we work to get things out, and one of the ways to get things out is by doing artwork. And so you may or may not know, but there's actually a neurological change happening when you're engaged in making art. Your nervous system is calming down, your parasympathetic nervous system is coming up, and that's the part of our nervous system that helps us feel calm, safe, and connected. The sympathetic nervous system has nothing to do with sympathy. That is the fight or flight part. So when we are under more stress, like all of us are right now, the sympathetic nervous system is more activated. And so our nervous system is, I call it regulating up. And hormones, things like adrenaline are in our nervous system when we're in that mode. And also cortisol. Some people may have heard of the stress hormone, cortisol. So one of the ways that we can bring our parasympathetic nervous system up is to calm down, believe it or not. And so we want to down regulate and bring the parasympathetic nervous system online. And one of the best ways to do that is by being engaged in something that you find soothing and calming. And it's amazing that just doing art can actually do that for us. So that's a really simple reason as far as why it might be a good idea. The other reason is that, if we do something externalizing whatever's going on inside our body, inside our mind, it gives us a little bit of distance between whatever those things are. And sometimes it allows us to have increased insight or a different perspective on something when we're not just thinking about it, but we're actually looking possibly at an image that is representing whatever the issue might be. It's also just fun. It's fun to play with the art materials. And as far as art journaling goes, there's really, the biggest rule is that there's really no rule. It's your personal expression, and therefore it will be perfect in whatever way it is. You don't need any exotic supplies. You can use a sketchbook if you want and just turn it into a journal. You can even use, remember the old composition books that we used to have when we were in school? You can take some of those pages and glue them together and then put some white paint. I like to use a watercolor weight paper in case you want to do painting. And I can sort of show you, give me a second and I'll switch to a different camera. I just save interesting papers. Like this is a bag from, I think I bought a postcard or something, but it has Victorian imagery on it. This is an envelope advertising a credit card, which I didn't need, but I really liked the paper. And so I was going to cut out different pieces of this swirly pink and silver paper and use it somehow. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it yet. And then I save magazine things that I'm attracted to. So this is just like, I might have a page that's dedicated to growing my own food or something like that. So, or the garden. So you can use scraps. You can use, I have here some tickets from years and years ago So this is a chance where you might be able to use like just the effluvia of things that you ended up wanting to keep but not knowing what to do with them. So I will show you my supplies, pretty simple. I have some good old-fashioned colored pencils. And again, if you don't have them, that's okay. You don't have to have them. These are just things that I happen to have on hand. They've all been well used. I have a box of chalk pastels that have also been very well used. And I have a box of oil pastels, which if you have crayons, you can do this. So oil pastels just have a little more oil in the pigment, and crayons have a little bit more wax. And then I have also a nice old watercolor paint set. If you have kids, you might have the kind that just has, 5 or 6 or maybe 8 colors, and that's okay too. It's also helpful if you think you might want to do some collaging with scraps from magazines or words from magazines. It's helpful to have a good glue stick and maybe a pair of scissors if you want to do some cutting. So I'm just going to give you a quick tour of what I have in my journal. And again, there's no rules. I like to create layers and then do some writing in the image itself. Let me move this over here for you guys. And but that's just me. Some people might like to put an image on one side and only words on the other side. The other thing that's nice is your words can just be your thoughts and reflections. They can be an actual poem or possibly a haiku, or it could just be a series of words that come to you. It could be responding to the image, or it could just be your thoughts. So there's no one right way and there's no one wrong way. I tend to, some of these are from a specific journaling project. I also like to use stickers if you have any stickers around. That's always fun. Old cards. This is an old card that I liked it. And I used to be a beekeeper, so it has bees. And then there's really, again, there's no right way, there's no wrong way. This was a project about teachers, people that I feel like I've learned from. And so when you open this, I have the Dalai Lama and Thich Nhat Hanh, and I have Pema Chodron. So it could be any topic, and it could be about any thoughts, concerns that you're having. Show you. The other thing I like to do, of course I don't have it with me right now, but I like to have a piece of wax paper. I don't know where my wax paper got to. I put sometimes a piece of wax paper underneath the page if I know I'm going to be working with watercolors or with acrylic paint, just to protect the page underneath. If you have any stencils around, that can be a fun thing to do. Like I said, my thing is I like to do a lot of layers, and I cut this out from a card. I think it was Winnie the Pooh asking Piglet what day it is, and Piglet says, "It's today." And Pooh says, "That's my favorite day." So again, anything goes as far as your art journaling. And this is an example of what I like to do. And I will show you guys. Oh, I found the wax paper. So one of the things I like to do, which I will show you, is you can do a couple of things. I like to use the oil pastels and the watercolor together, which is what this page is. So I use the oil pastels, and then I went over it with watercolor, and then when it was all dry, I did some writing, and my writing was really in response to this particular image and this particular page. So I was going to show you how that works. You probably have done this before, but it works really well, and it's fun. Kids love to do this, and you can do this any number of different ways as far as the colors. It doesn't really matter, but I like to just put down some oil pastel, and then I like to use some watercolor over it. So again, I like layers. I like the idea of layers. And with watercolors, if you haven't used them, one of the things you'll discover pretty early on is just the more water you use, the more translucent the paint will be. And if you just keep mixing and mixing and don't add a whole lot of water, it can come out and be pretty, the color will be deeper. So this is kind of like a reddish pink color. And again, you can just let it, and so if you can see, wherever there is the oil pastel, it resists taking in the color. So I'm going to do another color so you can see that. And so wherever there is oil pastel, the water can't go there. And so you get this fun little resist. And you can do this in any colors and any paints. And it's just kind of a fun little process that I like. I'll show you that. I'm going to let this, now if you have a blow dryer and you feel impatient, you can just blow dry your page. But around out here in Arizona, at least where I am in Lake Havasu City, by the way, things dry pretty quickly. And so another fun process that I like to do is, again, with the watercolors, is I will create kind of like a very abstract, something that would be considered a landscape. So I might just do something very minimally that could be perceived as mountains or hills. And then I will come back in with like something that could be perceived as a sky. And then after it dries, I can use my colored pencils or the oil pastels or the chalk pastels. And then I can add landscape features to this. I can add plants or trees, little cactuses. I have and I can show you just an outcome of that is already. So this is another process. This is the same thing I just showed you with the oil pastels, and then you can paint over that. This is actually chalk pastel that I just smudged onto the paper, and then I can go over that with the oil pastel. So, and then these are some of my little abstract landscapes, my little desert scape there. And that was just from wavy, something akin to looks like ground and something that looks like sky. And then I added the mountains and the cactus. This is another one that once I had it on, it just reminded me so much of like sand dunes and being at the ocean. And I just left it like that. So, and these can be then glued into your journal if you have the journal. I also wrote poetry on the back of these, so I need to figure out how to put the poetry where it's with the image. So the other thing I wanted to show you again was with the chalk pastels. So these are the chalks, and a lot of them are broken and little pieces. And so one of the things that's fun about chalk pastels, now they are a little messier than the oils. You will discover that. And if you don't like to get messy, then you might not want to use these, but I like to get messy. And then you can just use like a little piece of a paper towel. The tissue kind of tends to tear up, but I just use a little piece of paper towel and then basically smudge the color. And I let it spread out. I let it blend. I think you can see how it sort of blends right there where the blue starts. And just let them get all blended together. And you can just write on this if you like. You can write right on there if you want to. You can also use colored pencils and go over this, maybe creating a pattern. I'm just going to do some little leaves right now so you guys can see the possibilities of, you can draw on top of the oil pastel. You can also paint on top of the oil pastel because it doesn't resist. I'm sorry, on the chalk pastel. So you can paint right on top of this or draw or write. So I was going to show you what happens with the chalk pastel on paper. And then say I wanted to come in and add color in the form of paint. So you see, the paper is able to absorb the paint because the chalk pastel doesn't create the resist the way that oil pastels did. So you could have this. You could also put oil pastel on here and then go over it again with the paint. And again, you would have that resist. Show you guys. Oops. So on that one, because it's oil pastel, it does resist. Biggest thing that I could impart for you today is to have fun and to maybe experiment and just see what the materials do. And that can be the first few things that you might do in your journal. And then, once you've explored the materials, you kind of learn what their properties are, and you start to notice what works for you. And it can be a daily process, or it can be something you just do when you feel like it. But right now, as a specific activity that would allow your thoughts and feelings to be reflected in your journal, and also to hopefully reduce some of your stress. So I would like to wish everybody health and safety, and also to become friends with your journal. So thanks everybody for joining me today. I look forward to maybe hearing some stories about how your journaling process goes, and have fun exploring and playing and expressing your thoughts and feelings. Be well.